Welcome to our channel, Behind My Story. Please like, share, and subscribe.
A teacher earns the respect of his students and also serves as an exemplary role model. Unfortunately, student adoration of teachers is on the wane in society now. Students owe teachers some degree of loyalty for contributing to their success in life. But what if you discovered that your teacher was on the run from the law? How would you feel? Would you want to know? Lend an ear to my story. I am Erica, and I am 17 years old. I live with my parents and my sister Felicia. My lifelong dream was to excel in all areas of life. I did well in school, and my parents noticed my stellar intellect from an early age. So they encouraged and supported my education in every way. I loved and respected all the teachers who ever taught me. I respected them for their efforts, and I took a dim view of my fellow students who didn't respect them. I even respected the teachers who taught me unimportant subjects. Though I respected all my teachers, past and present, I hadn't yet found any worthy of being a good role model for me to follow until one day a new chemistry teacher, Mr. Franklin, came to our school when our previous teacher resigned to travel abroad with her family. From the very first moment when he first entered the classroom, I was charmed by his charisma. He seemed quiet, self-confident, and venerable. But it wasn't just me. All the students were impressed by his presence. His explanations were much clearer than our previous teachers. With every passing day, I loved him more and more. I had chosen a good role model. I was amazed by his resume qualifications and his erudition and experience. I liked to chat with him on breaks to benefit from his experience, wisdom, and insights. He never indicated that I was an annoyance to him. Instead, he welcomed all my questions openly and cheerfully and shared his knowledge freely. I didn't want to let him down, so I studied very hard. He was so worldly and street smart that we nicknamed him the Thug because he seemed to know exactly how the world operated and how to get around obstacles. We figured he was either an alien from space or a thug wanted by the law. Then one day while browsing the internet, I came upon a strange coincidence. I read about an intelligent serial killer who committed brutal crimes without leaving a trace. Some witnesses had seen him and described him to the police. The resultant face sketches looked exactly like Mr. Franklin, as if he had a twin brother. The first thought that came into my mind was that this was one weird coincidence. When I went to school the next day, I showed him the news article and the sketch of the serial killer. When he saw the sketch, his features darkened. He asked me where I had read this news, and I told him that it was from a news website. He agreed that the similarity between him and the sketch was uncanny, but he seemed unconcerned, disinterested even. I was wondering if Mr. Franklin were to be the killer, what his motivation for killing might be. The next few days strengthened my suspicions when I heard about a murder in our neighborhood, which coincided with a time when Mr. Franklin was not at school. When he subsequently returned to school, he looked worried and nervous. If he were the killer, why would he risk coming back to school? I then began to consider that he might be planning to kill me because I knew his dirty little secret. I had trouble for sleeping for the next few days. Then one day after visiting one of my friends, I was walking home when I sensed that someone was following me. I began walking more quickly, and the footsteps sped up proportionately. Suddenly, I felt a touch on my shoulder. I spun around to see Mr. Franklin. He gestured for me not to speak. I nodded okay. He then told me that he has a brother named Rodriguez, who was actually the serial killer that I had shown him in the news article. He said his brother followed him everywhere to torment him and cause trouble for him. He told me that he had to leave the city, and I was very sad to hear that. He hoped that we would meet again someday. After his disappearance from school, my mind was full of questions. Was he telling the truth? Was he truly innocent? I hope I find out the answers to my questions someday.
Love what you do until you can do what you love. This is a famous quote that inspires people to seek out their dream job. I heard that quote at school before I graduated and entered the working world. What's that, you ask? Was I successful in achieving my dream? Well, I came this close. Let me tell you about it. My name is Max and I'm 19 years old. Poverty and I are intimate friends and constant companions. I live in one of the poorest neighborhoods in my city. Most of the local citizens work at the seaport. The rest of us, we make a living by scavenging through and collecting rubbish. But I wasn't just an ordinary rubbish collector. No, sir, I was a specialist in that field, like my dad before me. Dad taught my brothers and me how to do it expertly. This is how it worked. Factories liked to use recycled materials to reduce the cost of buying new materials, so we would go to the city rubbish pile and separate out materials into different piles, such as plastics, glass bottles, milk cartons, tin cans, and so on. Then we would sell those materials to factories for reuse in making their products. This recycling process saved the factories a ton of money, but unfortunately, that didn't translate into a ton of money for us rubbish collectors. I had a dream one day of opening my own factory and just sitting back and watching the money flow in. When I told Dad that, he told me that good fortune only happens for a select few people. After hearing those words, I went to bed and dreamed about my future factory. Little did I suspect that my dream might actually come true someday. One day after working late collecting rubbish, while on the way home, I suddenly heard voices coming from a large rubbish pile in front of my home. It seemed that people were using that pile as a place of business to sell drugs and booze. An argument was brewing between two groups. Each group were wielding sticks and knives as makeshift weapons. One guy in Group A had a gun and shot someone in Group B, so someone in Group B stabbed gun guy in Group A. After that, a full-on fight ensued, with everyone in both groups joining in the fray. Within minutes, I heard approaching police sirens, which caused the fight to break up and both groups to run away, leaving the bleeding gun guy lying on the sidewalk. I tried to help him by staunching his bleeding. As I was doing so, I noticed a lottery ticket beside him with a letter saying that it was the winning ticket for $1 million payout. I froze. I looked around. No one was watching, so I acted, somewhat ignobly. Then I left quickly. If the police were to arrive and find me with the bleeding man, they might think that I had done it. I rushed home and fell into an easy chair, taking a deep breath of relief. While I was telling Dad about what had happened, there was a knock on the door. It was the Group A and B gangs. The spokesperson for the two groups held a knife in my direction and said, "Hand over the lottery ticket or die where you stand." Needless to say, I handed it over post-haste. But then he said, "I'm sorry, you've seen too much. You have to die." I pleaded, "But I didn't see anything, I swear." Suddenly, there was a flash from a camera, and the whole group of thugs began laughing. "You've been pranked," Dad said, as he stepped out from the crowd. My brothers were behind him laughing too. "You've been pranked," Dad said, as he stepped out from the crowd. My brothers were behind him laughing too. While relieved that my imminent death had been postponed, I was deeply saddened that I had lost my $1 million chance to get my dream factory. What rubbish.
A teacher often serves as a role model for his students. His morality, social conscience, manners, intelligence, personality, emotional savvy, and depth and breadth of knowledge are always on display. If these are all exemplary, he or she gains his students' respect, admiration, and reverence in the hearts. My name is Patty, and I am 17 years old. I am in my senior year at a prestigious secondary school renowned for having excellent teachers in all subjects. I am so proud of my school because they use modern, creative ways to teach in class. When I tell my friends about my school, they, being in lesser quality schools, usually don't believe me. One of our teachers recently gave birth to a new baby and took maternity leave, so our school had to hire a substitute teacher to cover her class in her absence. When he entered our classroom for the first time, we were awestruck by how handsome, intelligent, and elegant he was. All the girls adored him, including myself. I would rarely hear most of his explanations because I would be so focused on his enchanted eyes. Soon, I noticed that he liked me too. I wanted to know more about him, so I explored his Facebook page and concocted silly reasons to need to speak with him. We chatted on numerous occasions. During one such chat, He spontaneously asked me to send him my photo, but I was instantly uneasy with that request. It raised a red flag with me. It seemed creepy and inappropriate. I used the excuse that my mom had forbidden me from sending my picture on my phone, and was shocked when he took offense at my declining to do as he asked. He threatened me, saying that if I didn't send him nude pictures of myself, that he would use Photoshop to create such pictures of me and send them around the school. I was dumbfounded, numb, fearful. I told him we could meet tomorrow and talk some more. He warned me not to tell anyone about our relationship, or else he would ruin my life. I promptly made screenshots of all our previous conversations. I resolved to always turn on my voice recorder app each time right before we would meet again. I succeeded in making him feel relaxed enough that he spoke freely about his feelings and desires. Then I excused myself at some point and told him I had to go home because Mom had wanted me home to go somewhere with her. Instead, I went straight to the police station and told them about this substitute teacher and his indecent requests of me and his threat about ruining my life. I let them listen to our recorded conversations. They said that other students had complained about him before too, but they hadn't been able to get the concrete evidence that I had assembled. He had repeated this routine on different teenage students in several states. When he failed to return to school after I talked to the police that afternoon, I was the only one who knew what had happened to him. Could you live with yourself if you found out your whole life turned out to be a lie? That you are not who you thought you were? My story may strike you as a silly Hollywood drama, but every word of it is true, I swear. My name is Tasha, and I am 19 years old. I'm in the 12th grade, and I live with my family in a posh mansion. I was an only child, so my parents spoiled me by giving me everything I could ask for. Love, protection, the finest education, material things. My father always worried for my safety. He was so protective that it annoyed me, though I loved him for it. I lived the life that every teenager could only dream about. I had a car, money, and the ability to travel the world if I so desired. The only strain on my existence, as it were, was when I discovered a secret about my life, which is what this story is about. It was the first day of a new school year. The school day was over, and I was walking home with my friends when I noticed a woman standing across the street. She was watching me closely, as if she knew me. Perhaps I resembled one of her friends or relatives. This situation repeated itself on many occasions. Her stalking of me made me feel uneasy, even though she didn't look threatening in the least. So one day, I decided to exit out of the back side of the school instead of the front side. Then I peeked around the corner of the school building to observe her. She was scanning the exiting students carefully, one by one. She looked annoyed that she couldn't find me. Then I sneaked around behind her and tapped her on the shoulder. When she turned around and saw me, her face lit up with joy. I told her that I had seen her watching me every day and asked her why she was doing so. It seemed that she wanted to burst into a lengthy conversation, but instead she stopped herself and calmly handed me a letter. Then she began crying and left me quickly. I resisted opening the letter until I got home, sat down, and got comfortable. Then I proceeded to open the letter. It contained a calendar date and a simple note. Research this date and you will know everything. I browsed the internet for events that happened on that date. There were many hits. One hit was a news article about a woman who had killed her husband. Her husband had been constantly abusing her and her baby girl, so the woman had sold her daughter to a rich man to protect her life. When her husband discovered what she had done, he began beating her severely, and in self-defense, she killed him. I was shocked to read that the rich man she had sold the baby to was none other than my dad. I felt like I was in an Asian Indian movie. I'm in a quandary as to what I should do. Do you have any suggestions? Any advice? Please.
Everyone dreams of winning millions of dollars with minimal effort. I had an opportunity to do so. Would you turn down such an opportunity? Yeah, I wouldn't either. My name is Mender, and I'm 21 years old. I live with my mother and my little brother. Dad left us 10 years ago. Mom tried to contact him, but failed, so she was forced to raise us alone. She turned down many marriage proposals after that. From an early age, I have dreamed of doing something good to pay Mom back for all of her efforts in raising us, so I decided to use my intellectual talent to do so. You see, I'm highly intelligent. I can memorize a vast amount of information. I always earned excellent grades in school. The only problem was that I knew I could never work hard to get rich in my own country because it was so poor. The only chance I had to get rich was to have a fantastic stroke of luck, like finding a gold mine or a magical money tree. My chance came along one day when a game show called Who Will Win Millions offered millions of dollars to the winner. In this show, you have to answer a series of questions ranging from easy to hard. The catch was that the last question was always extremely difficult to answer. The show announced that the next winner would win $3 million. That kind of jackpot was exactly what I needed to achieve my dream of helping Mom, so I decided to apply to get on the show. They called me 2 days later to tell me that I had been selected to be one of the show's contestants. When I arrived at the show's studio, the staff greeted me and got me ready. A coin toss decided who would go first. I got lucky again and won the toss. As expected, the questions started out easy and gradually became increasingly difficult. I was able to answer the next to last question. So far, so good. The show was live, and I was confident that my family was watching me, praying that I would win. The final question was next. Suddenly, the game show host called for a commercial break because the show's director wanted to talk to me. The director offered me $50,000 to be sure to answer the last question wrong. I was shocked. They cheated and played stupid games with people's dreams. I refused to play their game of skullduggery. The show resumed, and I was lucky and was able to answer the last question correctly. It was an esoteric knowledge question, but I had read about it before, so I got lucky again. The host was visibly upset. Nevertheless, he asked if I wanted to say anything to the audience. I said I did, and then I proceeded to tell the audience that, on the last break, the show's director bribed me to miss the last question on purpose. At that point, the show's producer cut the live feed, and the director had security guards escort me off the studio stage into the back room where, well, I can't remember what happened there. Waking up later in a hospital bed, I spent weeks recovering from mysterious bruises all over my body. I received a small reward from the authorities for exposing a scam. It wasn't $3 million, but I was satisfied anyway. The show was canceled, and the staff were arrested and served some prison time. I gave my reward to Mom. What luck.